Hey there, fight fans. Jay Petrie of SureDoc.com here with a shortened, smaller panel version of our lovely Unleashed show. Ant Walker is away this week for Babby form duties, so we love you, buddy. We look forward to seeing you again, and I'm sure you have your hands full right now. But we thought this week, since we had a week off for most live coverage, we do a real slim down show where Ben, obviously the anchor of our panel, or the jack of all trades that's master of them all and whatnot, we'd have more of a conversation about some of the live events and results that happened this past weekend in the UFC card and whatnot. So, what are you thinking, Ben? How you doing? How was the weekend? How was the fight stuff? How was all that?
Oh, with one major exception, the UFC card this past weekend was frankly kind of a slog.
Hmm.
I'm just gonna say, I mean, they can't all be bangers.
Sure.
This one definitely wasn't, with the exception of the one fight of the year candidates. Yeah, I'm already looking forward to this week, really.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I agree. I think that Boser Latifi really shined in a way that it was that special kind of fight, kind of like how I expected that Ben Rothwell and Felipe Lins and/or Chris Barnett would show. So yeah, we were treated to some fun heavyweight violence. But before we get things started, there's no good segue for this transition right here, because I want to give the stat of the week and then we'll never talk about it again. And I actually mean this. But it's important enough because it's just crazy. So the stat of the week is plus 125. Now that's betting odds terms. It means a slight underdog. And the reason why that's coming up because former UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley has decided to be the next former UFC star to step over to the boxing ring, and he will be fighting and trying to avenge Ben Askren's loss and fighting Jake Paul. I think it's Jake Paul. I get it mixed up because they both do that thing. Yeah, and so Tyron Woodley will be boxing Jake Paul, and Woodley opened as a plus 125 underdog. The former UFC champion, who has a slew of knockouts, it was a betting underdog to a 3-0 boxer and YouTube personality, Jake Paul. So I just needed to drop that out there. If anybody's looking to make a score, Woodley is still a betting underdog in this fight at a 190-pound nonsense weight. So let's never talk about that again. UFC Fight Night 189, Vegas 28, all the rest of the names, Rozenstruik versus Sakai. It happened. It was a really, I didn't mince words about this fight card. I know I talked to you about this personally, that this card, there were some interesting fights. Like I like what you do when we preview fights, and you're like, I don't know if there's any major fights in this card, but I like these fighters that are having their showcases. I like that. This was what some people had hoped to be that kind of card, whereas I was a little more morose about it. I was a little more hesitant to embrace the interesting matchup and say, this could be a real tough one.
If it makes you feel any better, I was morose afterwards.
Yeah, man. I covered play-by-play for Sherdog, and it was an endurance trial, but at least then I ended with some knockouts. And speaking of which, the main event, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Augusto Sakai, ended by first round knockout, 459. So a literal buzzer beater knockout, beat down, whatever you want to call it. And I'm curious, really, your general impressions about the fight, because we knew Rozenstruik had hellacious knockout power. I mean, kickboxing and in MMA. And Augusto Sakai is I'm going to beat you down with attrition, and Rozenstruik can be hesitant. We had all the X's and O's. So when you look at that kind of result, where Rozenstruik struck almost out of nowhere, it was kind of a lull you into a sleep and then smash you in the face. Did you learn much about him and his path towards contention, anything like that, or was there a big takeaway from Sakai? What do you feel about this?
I still feel as though Sakai is what he is. Like, he fought exactly as I expected him to,
Mm-hmm.
and I picked him to win. And I don't think Sakai, I didn't think, and I still don't think Sakai is on the level of a Surreal Gon,
Mhm.
but I saw him as a huge kickboxer with decent footwork, who was probably going to be able to just stay away from Rozenstruik's death ray for 5 rounds. It did not turn out to be the case. I did learn a few things about Rozenstruik. He had more of a sense of urgency than he did against Gon, and frankly, than he did against JDS and Overeem, even though he won those fights. The actual finish, it's more than him just leaping out of nowhere. He actually did a good job of taking advantage of the way Sakai was circling to kind of trap him. I mean, and Bisping called it right before he did it. Like, he should go with the right to the body. That'll open up the left to the head, and not 10 seconds later, he does exactly that and puts the man down. So, yeah, I learned a little bit about Rozenstruik, and he's back. I always thought he was a little overrated, and I hate using that word because it sounds insulting.
Would it be overranked? Then would you think, is that more appropriate, or is there a degree of he beat JDS and Arlovsky, so oh my gosh?
Yeah, just the way he knocked out his first couple of opponents, he couldn't help but be pushed to the front of the line maybe sooner than he was ready.
Yep.
You know, like, more a case of being brought along too soon. He's 33, but he's still super green as an MMA fighter. He's a bit like Ngannou that way. But yeah, he impressed me. You know, he answered a few questions, though not all of them, about himself.
It's funny because, I mean, pushing past the fact that I picked this fight correctly, I wasn't sure it would play out exactly this way, because I know Sakai has, I wouldn't say he's crazy durable. We've seen him get, I guess, well,
he's
only right. He can be susceptible to be caught standing. Now, granted, his only previous knockout was to Overeem at tail end of the fight after just
getting out. That was him getting ground out on the ground.
He was exactly. He was kind of out of wind. And then I think, didn't he get taken down and elbowed out? Isn't that how Overeem finished it? So he was susceptible to getting caught. Like Blagoy Ivanov, of all people, I remember catching him, and Ivanov, Ivanov has kind of that surprising power, but he's one of those. I've watched him fight 20 times. I don't know if I could tell you exactly what he's good at, but I know he's good at a bunch of things. Whereas Sakai,
he's good at surviving stab wounds.
Yes, he's great, and getting in the cab and everything like that, and getting to a hospital. Rozenstruik did what he should have done. I truly, honestly, of the two fighters, I learned more about Sakai, because Sakai had been. I looked at Sakai as a guy who's going to be a curious fighter on the heavyweight division that won't come close to title contention, but he'll beat most of the other guys on the way. Like he'll be a fringe top 15 guy without ever being really in the conversation. Fighters like that they'll be ranked forever. Like I love Ryan Spann. I mean, I actually spoken to him in the past once before, but Ryan Spann's the kind of guy who will be 10 to 15, and he'll smash some guys, and there'll be some weird calls, but he probably won't ever get up to that top billing. And I think of Sakai like that. And this showed me his ceiling, I think. But maybe I'm writing him off too much. I don't know exactly. But thinking about writing fighters off, there's a fighter who has been written off in the heavyweight division for years. There's a fighter that one member of this discussion has been writing off and or picking against for quite some time. And this isn't a crow eating, jamming crow down the throat moment per se. MARCIN TYBURA is a gritty, in-your-face, pressure first, not heavy, not crazy heavy-handed. He's kind of like a grappling version of Sakai, and then Sakai won't cold cock you, but he'll bludgeon you and eventually get a later stoppage. TYBURA will, pound you out and do the kind of things that happen. So MARCIN TYBURA is now on a 5-fight win streak, which might be the most surprising thing that we'll say this show, is that TYBURA is on a 5-fight win streak. He beat Sergey Spivak and Ben Rothwell. He outlasted Greg Hardy and pounded him out. And now he knocked out Walt Harris after surviving a very typical Walt Harris blitz. So I guess my question to you after all that setup, MARCIN TYBURA, 5-fight win streak, got some impressive names on there, and it's going to be hard to start ignoring his name. Swinging or missing, is he a future title contender? Because he wants another win. He already said, I don't want to fight for the title. I know I'm a long way away or ways away, but I hope my next win can get there. Are you buying or selling on that?
Man, MARCIN TYBURA is making a really annoying habit out of making me wrong. As you alluded, he's on a 5-fight win streak, and I have personally chosen against him every one of those 5 times. Don't I look like a dick? And on top of that, he is making my axiom about the UFC heavyweight division look foolish, in which I always say literally anybody is 4 wins away from a title shot. Which, I mean, it's true if you burst onto the scene like a Jairzinho Rozenstruik or a Ciryl Gane. If you're a guy that everybody was already sort of writing off, because I was not alone in not thinking much of MARCIN TYBURA 2 years ago.
No.
You do have a little longer and quieter route to contention, because he's on a 5-fight win streak, but before that 5-fight win streak, he was probably fighting for his job. He'd lost 4 of 5 in the UFC.
Correct.
Tristan Critchfield, who writes the official rankings for Sherdog, pointed that out. He was like, in September 2019, he was in danger of losing his job.
Yep.
And now he's on a 5-fight win streak over all at least decent fighters, all at least fighters with some threat or something to offer. I mean, even Greg Hardy has knocked out some decent fighters.
Yeah.
And guys like Spivak and Harris were fringe contenders. Even now, I'd say TYBURA is probably 2 wins away. He's going to get a top 10 fighter next.
Yep.
Depending on matchup, he might actually have a fairly easy time with that top 10 fighter. And then it's probably a title eliminator, or even just, hey, you're on deck in case one of these 2 guys gets injured or pulls out. He's there. And yeah, I've underestimated him. I've counted him out all along. I said this about Sakai, but I was thinking about TYBURA. TYBURA is the guy who can be blitzed.
Yes.
And so every time he's fighting a Greg Hardy, a Walt Harris, I'm like, I'm not going to bet on him not to get caught with something nasty in the first 7 or 8 minutes. He's gotten past that. Like, Walt Harris is a deeply flawed fighter, but aside from the very cream of the crop, the Ngannous and Rozenstruiks, there might not be a more dangerous guy in the entire worldwide heavyweight division in the first 3 minutes of a fight.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Ask Alexei Oleinik, who otherwise has kind of a granite chin. Like Walt Harris made that look a lot easier than even Derek Lewis did.
Yeah.
So
Need him in the face in 12 seconds or so.
And TYBURA took all that artillery.
Yeah.
And with composure, took it over, because Harris didn't freak out like he did against Overeem. He didn't have that I'm panicking even though I'm winning, which is what his first round against Overeem looked like. He was pretty measured against TYBURA. He just can't stop a takedown. TYBURA grabbed that kick, hoisted him up, dumped him. Very impressive takedown of a huge man, by the way. And it was all over from there. Harris had literally nothing. You once described Greg Hardy against TYBURA as like a turtle that had been flipped over. Harris had more to offer than that, but not against TYBURA. Like, I would say a heavy top game is probably TYBURA's most outstanding single trait, and he put it on display.
He is in a very interesting position, TYBURA, that there are some matchups that I could see him excelling at as he move up the rankings, but there aren't many. Because right now, if you look at it, he dispatched Walt Harris, who was ranked number 8 at the time. UFC rankings at this time haven't been updated, but you assume he'll be in the top 10. He'll skip. Well, I don't know if he'll skip past Sakai, because Sakai blitzed him in a minute, I believe, which was kind of a surprising thing. If you would like, I'll make you feel better about something. Against Spivak, I picked Spivak. Against Grishin, I picked Grishin. Against Rothwell, I picked Rothwell. I did pick TYBURA in his last two against Hardy and Harris by decision and later knockout. So I too was. It took me a little longer to realize this TYBURA can get clocked in the face and not just fall over. Because Harris had him in bad shape. There was something Harris did in the fight that I really, really liked. He hurt. I don't know if I could pull up my play-by-play to recognize the exact moment, but he had hurt TYBURA, and he was blitzing him, and he was crashing forward to finish the job, but then he backed off. And I don't know if it was to catch his breath because he had thrown a whole lot at him to avoid any potential counters, to get enough distance so he wouldn't be susceptible for a takedown. Whatever Harris did for a moment, he backed away. And I thought that was a smart thing because I also thought to the Overeem fight where he was just kind of attacking so recklessly, going, I got to get this finish. I can't not get this finish. And TYBURA was able to outlast that storm. I did like that about TYBURA. I gotta think Rozenstruik is a great matchup for him, and also a good matchup just in general because timing matches up. Both guys took a couple shots, but nobody's that worse for wear. TYBURA was his regular, I think, Matt Damon himself at the post-fight interview. I think that's what they were calling him. So that would match up, and that would make him push higher up the division, because otherwise he's going to fight either a better wrestler like Curtis Blades would probably do bad things to him, or a guy that will say, you're not taking me down. Like, yeah, well, I mean, Derek Lewis might be fighting for a title, but a Derek Lewis type who would say, not so fast, my friend. No. Oh, yeah, jump in.
Well, because I actually suggested Rozenstruik versus TYBURA in the matches to make column right after the event. I think it makes all the sense in the world. TYBURA's problem is that he's fought everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had 14 fights in the UFC heavyweight division. So everybody that's like kind of within a stone's throw of him in either direction in the rankings, he's already fought.
Yeah, he definitely has. Oh, that's right. Derek Lewis knocked him out already.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Sakai, Abdurrahimov. Yeah, he's in a weird situation. I'm curious how the UFC wants to push him going forward. If they because he's 35, so he's a baby in the heavyweight division. He's got like 8 more years left him at this rate. And speaking of fighters that are about 34, 35 and impressing you and possibly having a rebirth, you alluded to at the very beginning of us talking about the fight that mattered. And this was a fight that was so interesting. I showed somebody shortly after it happened when I was down here to show them, be like, I know you don't really love fighting, but check this one out. And that to me was that kind of fight for Santiago Ponzinibbio and Miguel BAEZA. That was that. I sometimes will say it's going to be that. It's that kind of fight where you just everything both of them have, damage, momentum shifts, knockdowns potentially, getting out of bad situations, all the craziness. And obviously we are a very live in the moment type of fan as the MMA community, so much so that, of course, and for good reason to a point, the fight was being discussed as a fight of the year contender. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't think of a lot of just absolute mayhem fights this year that are worthy of consideration like this one. I can think of another one, but I can't think of that many more. Is this right up there, Ponzinibbio BAEZA, as a top fight of the year contender?
It's top 2. I mean, wasn't Figueiredo Moreno 2 this year?
2 is it's coming out soon.
The Figueiredo Moreno 1. Sorry,
December.
Okay,
because it was in the of the year lists.
That's right. Yeah, this is my fight of the year so far.
Yeah. It's funny. The only one I can think of that really just makes me, because we've talked about this before. We'll talk about it a billion more times about how fight of the year. You can have a Fury Fighting Championship show, and it'll be a crazy, absolute slobber knocker. Jim Ross going crazy in the stands, kind of wild brawl, but it takes more than just crazy action to merit fight of the year consideration, which is why I think Prochazka and Reyes may be one that can be in the discussion, but at the same time, a top 10 worthy fight, and it had the pleasure of being basically the only great fight on the card. Because context matters. You think of UFC 189 had some unbelievable fights leading up to it. I remember talking to people how, even the Matt Brown prelim, I think it was Matt Brown, Tim Means, I think was a fight on that card. But people told Dennis Bermudez, Jeremy Stevens, and wild things. And then, oh boy, Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald. I guess we can just throw the rest out in the dumpster because they don't matter. Yeah, I think so. I think it's a pretty easy top 2, top 3 already. And we have a fight this coming weekend that may challenge it if it's anything like the first one. But we had some good in this fight card, this UFC card, but we had a fair amount of bad. Specifically, my picks were relatively inconsistent. The only thing I can really crow about is that the prime picks for Sherdog.com nailed it. So that any little win you can get. But otherwise, I had some moments where I totally blew some calls. So to you, my friend, how's taste your crow?
Well, I got a lot of fights wrong on this card, but the one that just really did not pan out like I saw it going at all was Gregory Rodrigues over Dusko Todorovic. There's no way this just completely jacked individual is going to cut back to 186 pounds, 2 weeks after knocking out Josh Fremd and be able to take on a pretty decently well-rounded fighter in Dusko Todorovic. Even if he's the better fighter in a vacuum, his cardio is going to be a vacuum after about 7 minutes. That was not the case. He handled Todorovic and he won the 3rd round, which is, that speaks eloquently to his cardio because it was a moderately paced middleweight fight and he was fine. That means that, you already know that getting signed to the UFC is your I'm going to Knott's Berry Farm when you win the LFA middleweight title. In fact, Fremd will now be the only one of the last 6 LFA middleweight champs not to get signed to the UFC within 3 months. But it looks now like he might have more of an Ian Heinisch ceiling than a Marcus Perez one. So that's good. I learned something, and we have, maybe a more interesting new face in the division even than I was expecting. I don't mind that, Crow.
Yeah, RoboCop, man. I too was quite shocked that
I love that the Brazilians just nickname anyone RoboCop that has really big pecs.
Yeah,
because that was what's his name? Stephan Bonner's first. No, Stephan Bonner's first nickname.
It was?
Yeah, all the Carlson Gracie guys called him RoboCop because they were all Brazilian and he had these big square pecs and they called him RoboCop.
That's a good nugget. However, I think I also picked Todorovic to win because I thought that RoboCop would fade, and that was a fun enough thing. But where I simultaneously nailed it and struck out because I expected Tanner Boser versus Ilir Latifi would go the distance. That was the prime pick on that fight, that I expected that Boser would stay on his bike, leg kick, long jab, leg kick, long jab. You can lather, rinse, repeat, Cyril Gahn style, and stay away from the big clinches and the 2 overhand rights that come from Latifi until he sucks wind and it's out of gas. And Boser did that. He was taken down the first, and then the second round happened. I thought, okay, this is the Boser fight I expected. He worked Latifi. He did some damage. He was kind of close to a stoppage. I'd say I saw a few people thinking about 10-8, but I didn't think it was quite a 10-8 round. And then Boser fell on his back for the last round and proceeded to give the fight away, or was unable to get out because Latifi is a big old lug. I didn't think that Latifi's game of that style, and I actually said this in the prime picks, in that Latifi acts like a wedge spot from BattleBots, and that he's just going to go and he might not do a lot of damage in this iteration of him, but he's going to push you against the cage, and he's going to try and push you over, and if it isn't that, it's not very fun. And the Derek Lewis fight is kind of one of those examples, and the Tanner Boser fight was kind of like that too. So I'm eating crow, and I disagree with all of it. I don't know what they're going to do with Latifi, because he's in a situation where, well, I don't know if any of his fights will look good going forward. But ultimately, I wasn't surprised at that result, because I know that's all Latifi wanted to do was take him down and mush him and mash him and grind him like a cheese grater. But there were some surprising things that happened this week. We had UFC, had the KSW card, they had the LFA show. We've been off for a little while, so we've had some news to talk about. So I'd like to break into our I'm Not Surprised Mr. Falcon segment, because I love it. It's a very near and dear place to my heart, even though it's just you and I think we can do it justice. So what surprised you the most about this week's or this past week's coverage or everything about fights?
I mean, plenty of things surprised me this past week, but something I'll just kind of take right off the top of my head, because I'm thinking about UFC Vegas 28, is Roman Dolizde. I mean, I count me among the many who said, what the hell, when he came to the UFC, as kind of an obscure prospect. He's 32 years old, hadn't fought in a couple of years, and just kind of pops up in the UFC, wins his first 2 fights at light heavyweight, just looking like a Georgian Hulk. I mean, and then just out of nowhere decides to drop to 185 pounds. So it's like, this makes no sense at all. Like, I understand dropping weight is like a panic move if you've lost your first 2 fights in the UFC, but he'd won. And he, decided to drop to a division where it's not particularly an easier path to contention. And he lost his first fight at middleweight. But, he lost to Trevin Giles, not because it was a bad weight cut, but just because Giles was a better fighter that night. Against Laureano Staropoli, Dolizde looked different. Like, on the scale, walking to the cage, he did not look like an overly sucked out 205-pounder anymore. He clearly has done the work to reshape his body for the new weight class, and that alone is a heartening thing. And it probably goes down to him having spent now 3 camps at Extreme Couture, whether that's just directly working with the Extreme Couture guys, or many of the Extreme Couture fighters use the UFC PI for strength and conditioning. And frankly, the PI has been magic in that regard for a lot of fighters. But whatever it is, I am surprised, Mr. Falcons, that his foray into 185 pounds looks like he's taking it seriously and doing it the right way. I don't know what the ceiling is there, but, he's 3-1 in the UFC right now. And in either of those 2 divisions, outside of the top 10, it's kind of a wasteland. Like, he's not going to need to win many more fights before he crops up on the radar at 185 pounds.
But will you want to watch it?
No, I will not. It's rough watching. Keith Schillen, my co-host on both the previews and the recaps, pointed this out. He looks like a superhero, but he's not a plus athlete. Like, he's strong as hell, but he's not explosive, And so when he wins, it's going to be like just grindy, low-paced stuff.
I feel like, at least what I think it was WWFC. I think that, where did he fight beforehand? WWFC, where he did have some of that explosiveness, but he was also much larger. I mean, geez, look at his Sherdog Fight Finder profile picture. That's him not wearing a muscle suit. To any of the fans watching right now, or if you want to superimpose the image on the screen, he is muscles on muscle. He is the William Knight that you put more bowling balls on him.
So something is sometimes lost on that transatlantic flight.
What are you going to do? But I'm leaving the UFC to talk about my moment, or it's not a moment. It's dragging on longer than it should, because our dear friends at the Professional Fighters League, I need to make a segment out of this. I think I might need to write a piece about this because it's starting to become
What the hell, PFL?
what the hell PFL. I like it a whole lot, and I think we might have something there. So I guess the way I'll approach it is that somehow PFL and the New Jersey Commission uh, made a decision so problematic that Fabricio Verdum, has abandoned ship on the tournament. Now he was supposed to, instead of a rematch. Now, in case you don't recall, those of you watching, Verdum submitted Renan Ferreira in their PFL fight, but the Keith Peterson was on the other side, couldn't see the tap, so Ferreira postured up and knocked out and ended up knocking out Verdum. And there was a lot of controversy. The result was overturned to a no contest, and nobody was happy about that result either. And you can count this guy among those people, even knowing that there's a jurisdiction and authority question about the PFL recognized by overturning this result that Renan Ferreira tapped. So therefore, he lost, and Verdum believes that's the case, and so PFL lost one of their biggest name fighters because of this situation. And I want to keep going about this because there's matchmaking problems. There's questions about what's going on. Fighter Chris Wade just found out his opponent.
I was about to interject that I just published an interview between PFL now featherweight Chris Wade and Sherdog's Tudor Leonte, where Wade leads with, "I found out about my next fight from a friend who saw it on Instagram." Yeah. Like, not only is it explicitly not random matchmaking, like they just fully admit that they're massaging the matchups, but their own fighters are finding out about it not through their management or not directly from the promotion, but just it's being announced on social media. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, and the question about matchmaking is one that I guess I'll give another section, another minute to, because I believe PFL 4 is on Thursday, which will be headlined by Claressa Shields, because that's cool. She's fighting the tournament. Oh wait, no, she's not fighting the tournament fight. She's fighting a 3-6 woman, but that's cool. Claressa Shields is now in MMA, so good luck with that. Or the fact that Anthony Pettis lost in a resounding fashion to Clay Collard and is billed higher on the card than the man that beat him. No. Push all past that. The matchmaking, okay. PFL has control of its matchmaking and will set the events how it wants. Fine, cool, whatever, I guess. But in doing so, PFL has structured its events, and this is the heavyweight results are still, the heavyweight matchmaking, I guess, is still in the works, I suppose, where fighters that won will fight against fighters that lost. It isn't a losers fight losers, winners fight winners situation. It is a very clear result that Lance Palmer is fighting the only other fighter that didn't win, I believe, up until the opponent changed or something like that. So this reeks of a lot of issues, and I don't want to say manipulation per se, but there aren't many other words to say if you actually map out how the matchups are going for this second round. It's not pretty.
And it's worth mentioning here that there's nothing inherently wrong with them matching winners against winners, winners against losers, however they want. Like, literally every promotion in the world does that. Like the UFC matches whoever they want with whomever they want.
Sure.
Just if PFL is going to do that, then they need to stop presenting themselves as something unique. Like, stop presenting yourself as a season, and playoff format that bears any resemblance to stick and ball sports.
Yeah,
like that's all you need to do. Like,
I think that's I don't want to call out the specific PR people that send emails in all caps for no reason, but there is a message issue. The PFL has been pushing very hard to be, we're the number 2. We're doing all these things differently. We're the only playoff league, and we're the only one that has a season. And yes, that is technically true, and technically correct is the best kind of correct. But ooh boy, some of these things are like, the PFL will arrange it so it's pretty clear that some fighters are favored in the matchups they're receiving compared to others. And that's the last I'll say on that issue, because I have something else to be upset about. And I'm not going to time it. Ant's not here. And I'm not going to time you saying 30 seconds to answer this question. So I'll ask you a series of questions, and I want you to give me one sentence answers about each of these questions, okay?
Okay.
So this is our modified speed bag round. I'll think of a clever name when it's too late, probably at about, I don't know, like 9:30 tonight, and I'll text you and go, that's the one. So my first question, for those that don't know, Vitor Belfort has decided to join the ranks of boxing, just like Tyron Woodley recently, and he's fighting some guy named Tarzan, because cool. Why, Ben, is Vitor Belfort 44? Yeah, Vitor Belfort boxing.
Because he can.
Okay. Why is Vitor Belfort boxing some guy named Tarzan that has never fought as a pro in any fight? Like, I think the only fight he's ever had was when he fought with one of his neighbors and he got arrested.
Because Florida allows it.
Okay. Why is our beloved 44-year-old Vitor Belfort going over to boxing after hooking up with one championship? Because remember, that was a very big deal. Ant Walker attended a media event where Vitor was TRT tour again. So, yeah, why is that happening?
I frankly don't have an answer to this. I'm shocked that Vitor Belfort is having a boxing match before his one championship debut. It leaves me wondering whether he will actually ever fight for one championship. You know, I now it makes me go all the way back and makes me wonder whether there was ever any intention that he actually fight for one championship. Like when they did the big announcement, when they did the press conference, was it just strictly a publicity thing for everyone involved? Or did they actually want him to fight Aung La or Brandon Vera? I don't know. I don't know. Like, one championship frustrates me, obviously, but they also mystify me. Like, I don't even know what their intended end game is sometimes. And this was one of those times. If they intended Vitor Belfort to fight for them and they screwed the pooch so badly that he's going to do the most meaningless celebrity boxing bout of the last 3 years, that is saying something.
So for Sure Dog, I write news, and one of the stories was to put this story together about Vitor Belfort fighting a guy named, and I quote, the real Tarzan, with two N's at the end.
Isn't he like a python wrangler or something?
Yeah, yes, he's a YouTube conservationist and animal activist that has animals, and some people call him like Snake Joe Exotic or something. I don't know exactly the specifics
Snake
of this.
Joe Exotic.
Something
well,
like
I was
that.
already going to say that Python Wrangler sounded kind of gay.
Yeah.
And, well, I mean,
Yeah.
It doesn't get much more gay than Joe Exotic.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I very much struggled to put this piece together because I thought it was a bit. I thought it was a gag. I thought it was fiction. I thought, oh, that's just silly. Then I watched the video. Now, for those of you that haven't seen the video, first of all, don't watch it. Okay, we'll skip that. And second of all, no, stop. Don't do that. Leave it alone. There's nothing to be gained by trying to stage a brawl to hype up an undercard match on a Triller boxing card that not a lot of people are probably going to buy. Even though I like Tia Lopez a lot, it's just not going to be very memorable. And why Tarzan? I don't know. The only thing I do know is that Vitor Belfort and One Championship have officially parted ways. So I don't know. Maybe it was a fact that he wasn't offered a fight in a certain amount of time, and they said we're out because I believe he was signed. He left UFC from Machida kicked him in the face in 2018. So maybe there was a 3-year. He said, you haven't given me a fight in 3 years, because he was supposed to fight Alan Ngannou, or Alan
Ngalani.
Ngalani, thank you. He was supposed to fight him, who was a sub 500 muscles upon muscles guy, and Ngalani was pulled to fight somebody else. I think he was Rug or somebody, Buchecha, something like that,
Yeah.
and that all fell to pieces. So yeah, Vitor Belfort. Okay, don't want to talk about that anymore. I swore we weren't going to go off on boxing, but here we go. Let's talk about something more topical. This weekend, there are a lot of live events happening, and I'm not even able to get into all of them. Like Invicta has a tournament. I like the Phoenix series, even if it's a little squidgy about how the first fights are exhibition fights because they're 1 rounds, and I don't really like the whole idea of a 1 round fight because there's all kinds of it's boy you can clinch and win the fight for 5 minutes or 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes, but we're not even talking about that because that is on its own because Bellator has a bigger card and it's not quite a tent pole card in the traditional sense of the big shows they put on before, but they are putting on a fight with a title fight on the line.
And it's not a tentpole event from a standpoint of like superstardom, but it might be the best fight they can put on right now.
And I think that is the best possible way to get into that because it is probably one of the best fights on the roster. Douglas Lima, who was the welterweight champion, who is moving back down from his ill-fated trip because he decided, I'm big enough to take on Gegard Mousasi. Oh, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And he's fighting a stud in Yaroslav Amosov, who I have been high on for quite some time. I don't want to seem like I'm a cool guy or anything like that, but I've been watching him since his fights in Tech Prep, which I don't believe are around anymore. And this guy is nasty. And what I like most about what Amosov has been able to do, he sets up front chokes from scrambles that I don't see very often, and he's got a lot to offer. And Lima versus Amosov is a spectacular fight. So the fight card otherwise, there's some interesting things. Oh, cool, Paul Daly's fighting again. Oh, Aaron Pico's fighting somebody that he's going to try and knock out. Okay, hey, there's a Claxton. Okay, Nick Newell. Oh, cool, hey, Nick Newell. But the main event is the most important fight. So what do you think about that? How do you see it going? You got any particular standout points you want to make on it?
I haven't watched tape on it yet, but I'm actually leaning Amosov. I'm with you. He's a complete stud. His win over Logan Storley was a big eye opener to me because I am a huge believer in Storley, and the thing that shocked me there was Amosov's physical advantages. Like Logan Storley, one of the best wrestlers in MMA, meaning one of the best MMA wrestlers in MMA,
100%. Yes.
was just he wasn't big and strong enough to do the things he's used to doing against Amosov, who is himself obviously a good wrestler. I'm feeling the upset on this one. I have the feeling that Lima's probably going to be a pretty comfortable favorite. I'm not looking right now, but I bet he's going to come in at like minus 250 or something. And I'm kind of leaning Amosov.
Yeah, I don't believe the lines are up yet. I think the Bellator lines will open on Tuesday or Wednesday, so they'll be coming relatively soon. But I think I'd agree that Amosov will probably be an underdog, even though I don't know if he should be. Honest and truly, based on the style sets and the things that Lima struggles against, I feel like this is a really excellent matchup for Amosov. Now, granted, the only guys who have really imposed that kind of game that can beat him and nullify him, Mousasi, Koreshkov when he was a rock star, and that Ben Askren guy. And I think Rory kicked his leg off, or I forget exactly the specifics of their first fight, but it takes a very special guy to take out Lima. Amosov's got that style. I think he's got that kind of style. He can suffocate Lima. He'll get inside, so he won't be susceptible to those horrifying, bone crushing, calf demolishing leg kicks. And I think that Amosov is going to get the belt, and I think he's going to be a real problem because I don't know if Bellator will know how to market him outside of undefeated. And that's a weird thing to have because he has some highlights already. He hit a Darce choke on David Rickles that was extremely slick, and I think that was obviously a big highlight on his ledger. His win over RoboCop, Roberto Soldic, was also a really impressive one, even though I don't think it was as close as the scorecards came out. But yeah, I'm impressed. They were both picking the perceived upset on this one. And it's going to be, I think it's like a 10 or 11 fight card, so it's not going to be nearly as jam packed. But I am genuinely looking forward to seeing Nick Newell fight again. So that also that'll be good. But there's one card that stands so far and above the rest of them that even some of the prelim matches might serve as Bellator level main card to co-main event fights. And of course, we know what I'm talking about. The double rematch event double championship rematch event of UFC 263, because Israel Adesanya is fighting Marvin Vettori again, and Davison Figueiredo is fighting Brandon Moreno again in what we recall as one of the best fights of last year. And UFC is also doing that really strange thing where, for no reason whatsoever, Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz are fighting in a 5-round fight. On the main card, no championship on the line. They don't even have a fake belt. They don't even have like a Mayweather McGregor, the green, ugly, horrifying thing that was way too expensive. They don't have any of that. They just decided, we're going to give Nate Diaz a 5-round fight. And I don't understand that. And before we get into our segment that is also near and dear to my heart of the Who You Gots, I want to ask you about that 5-round fight. Why do you think the UFC decided, of all the fights it has ever run or planning on running, that we're going to make a non-title, non-main event 5-round fight for Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz?
The only reason I can think of is that they misguidedly believe that will favor Diaz's chances to win, because they are thinking of prime Diaz brothers, where their cardio was endless. They would win wars of attrition, and they had the venomous grappling game off their back that left them capable of winning a fight at any moment. A longer fight favors the more dynamic finisher as long as they have enough cardio. That was the Diaz brothers. The Diaz brothers were made for, the Diaz brothers were made for no time limit fights. They're old school Gracie types. But I think they misguidedly believe that that's going to favor Diaz, not realizing that Leon Edwards is made for 5-round fights. I watched from 15 feet away as Leon Edwards completely destroyed Rafael dos Anjos. This is going to be ugly. I mean, I know you're not asking me for my prediction for this fight yet.
Well, no, we'll lead into that.
These 5 rounds do not favor Nate Diaz.
Yeah,
that's all I got to say about that. Like, Leon Edwards, just his game, he's a nullifier. And this is going to be a lot of Nate Diaz looking really angry and saying salty shit in the post-fight presser.
Yeah, I've been trying to wrap my head around rationale other than Nate Diaz's popularity, why this would be a 5-round fight. And one of my thoughts was that the UFC was expecting, there's a few theories, that the UFC was planning on using this as a headliner, sold it to the guys as a headliner of a fight night card. So we're going to make it 5 rounds. And then they went, oh, no, let's put it in arena with fans around there. And Diaz was already planning for a 5-round fight. So Diva Diaz said, no, I'm not fighting in a 5-round fight. Or they want to showcase that's the best idea I have. That this was originally planned as a 5-round fight for another thing, and they moved it over because UFC has slots cards and slots fights around all the time. Uriah Hall, Sean Strickland is now suddenly a headliner somewhere over there. But man, this does not bode well for Nate Diaz. And I'm going to start off the Who You Gots with a very brief breakdown and analysis. I would appreciate if you would agree, disagree. I already know where you're going to lie, but here's my thoughts on this fight. Leon Edwards is going to box up Nate Diaz, and people are going to be upset about that because Nate Diaz can box people up, and the power that Edwards presents for a long period of time, his defensive ability to slip strikes and counter, his ability to move angles instead of just walking straight forward, as a Diaz brother will kind of very clearly face hanging off while zombie walk towards you like a Terry Martin versus Chris Lieben kind of thing. But Edwards is going to style on him. Like, I could see a 50-45 here. Am I nuts? Or will it be closer than that? Or what are you feeling?
No, I expect, if it goes all 5 rounds, I expect Edwards to win all 5 rounds. Not only is Edwards, probably a superior boxer, certainly at this point in their respective careers, he's also a very good wrestler. There was a time when he might have been the best British wrestler in MMA.
Yeah.
Like Diaz's chances. What are Diaz's chances of winning here? A Hail Mary sub. That's it.
Yeah.
Because, Nate Diaz is a very good boxer, but he's not a knockout artist. Yeah. And like Edwards going to take him down. He's going to cut him wide open with the first elbow, or his jab is going to split Diaz's face open. So Diaz is going to be covered in blood by the end of the first round, and it's just going to be downhill from there. Like the UFC booth will be trying to sell us on this is a great fight and these rounds are close, and they'll talk up whatever Diaz does. But yeah, 50-45, if not 50-44.
You're actually changing my mind a little bit. Because I don't know if this will go the distance now that I think about it. Because Diaz has more scar tissue than, everybody not named like Vanderlei Silva. So Edwards could get a 3rd round stoppage accumulation of damage. He's probably not going to tap him out. I think who submitted Diaz before? Only one fighter has submitted him before. This is a trivia question. He has very, very memorable hair. He's not a good person, if I remember correctly. Hermes Franca. It's okay.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, Edwards is just, to me, all around. And here's a fun fact that I didn't know until I think yesterday. For some reason, I've forgotten. Leon Edwards is 29.
Isn't that crazy?
He has a lot left in the tank, and he's going to be on a pretty crazy unbeaten streak. And here's my worst prediction of all. A dominant win over Nate Diaz, and Leon Edwards will not get the next UFC title shot. That is my boldest prediction of all, that even though he will win in resounding fashion, somebody like Wonderboy Thompson will pass him.
He and Lauren Murphy can talk about it.
Yeah, I think they should have a good conversation. They can make a podcast. I'd listen to that. So, speaking of podcasts, no, I don't have a good transition there. Crazy fight happened last year. Figueiredo, Moreno for the flyweight belt. Both of those guys took the fight on short notice. They actually both fought at the same card, so they took a short notice fight. They both took it 2 weeks later and beat the brakes off of each other. Figueiredo was hurt about as badly as he's ever been hurt. It was 3rd round or so, I think. 3rd or 4th round when Moreno had him on the ropes and he was struggling to keep going, and Moreno's chin held up to the kind of damage you just shake your head. You go, there's no way. How is this kid still standing? I don't care that they're flyweights. Figueiredo is a different kind of striker. So the rematch, for a lot of marbles, bragging rights, pound for pound consideration, is going to be a lot of fun, I believe. So before I ask you who you got, is this fight your very clear fight of the night expectation?
No, I don't think this one will live up to the first one.
Sure. Like a Griffin Bonner 2 kind of situation?
And almost anybody, too. Like, unless you're talking about the Godfather series, how often does the sequel, live up to or surpass the original?
Not very often. Henderson, Cerrone, no. Yeah, I guess not. All right, so who do you got?
I have Figueiredo. I'm looking at the odds. He's about a 2.5 to 1 favorite. That sounds about right. The first fight was great, and it was rightfully a draw, but that felt as though just a case of, there was chaos introduced. They were both fighting a fighter other than the one they'd been preparing for. That kind of chaos, it favors the underdog. Introducing more unknowns to the equation favors the underdog. On a full camp to prepare for each other, I think Figueiredo was just quite a superior fighter. Moreno, basically jumped out of the gym in their first matchup. He did incredible performance. I don't think it's replicable for him. I think Figueiredo is going to win a fairly buttoned down victory here.
Now, do you feel it will be less action-packed? Do you feel it would result in a quicker stoppage? Like, will Figueiredo snipe him, or what do you mean by that? Like buttoned up.
I mean, I don't think Moreno's going to catch Figueiredo and have him on roller skates.
Okay.
Like it'll be pretty furious. Figueiredo he's not furiously paced by flyweight standards.
Yeah.
He's kind of the Jose Aldo of flyweight, where he's wait, kill. As opposed to just a Demetrius Johnson, where it's just this constant whirlwind of action. That's how he manages his gas tank as a titanic 125-pounder. Now, he's probably going to end up fighting at a more brisk pace than he wants at times, because Moreno is that furious fighter. But I think, Figueiredo, his footwork, his kicks, his boxing, his willingness to lean on offensive wrestling, I think he's going to manage the tempo of this fight. I'm not picking a finish necessarily. Moreno is incredibly tough, but I think he's going to win a pretty clear-cut decision here. Like the term outclassed, I think will be used in post-fight analysis.
I like the way you answered the question I had, because it kind of dovetailed into the way I'm looking at it. I see Figueiredo in a more buttoned-up performance, in that he will use a skill set like his offensive wrestling to shut down Moreno and damage him beyond repair. I believe, without going and burying any leads or something, that Moreno will suffer his first career stoppage loss at this event. I believe that the first round, strap in, like probably round of the year contender already. But once there's a taste of power, a little surprise, maybe somebody gets caught standing, this fight will probably go to the ground, because then he can Deus de Guerra can work that the god of war can work his ground game and throw elbows and do all kinds of nasty things. I'm leaning towards like probably a late second round stoppage, bloody, messy, horrible, oh my god, whoa, like a moment kind of stoppage where people go, oh no, there's nobody left at flyweight who can handle, because Moreno was not expected to be able to hold up, and he held up extremely well. I don't see Figueiredo making those mistakes, and I see him getting a stoppage. So that would be, it'd be 1-1 for 1-0-1 actually for Figueiredo, and Moreno wouldn't get one. Now on to the other fight. Do you see Marvin Vettori getting one over on Israel Adesanya? And before you answer that, are you at all buying into the talk that Vettori claims that he won the first fight?
No.
Good. Thank you.
No. It was super, super clear. He won one round and lost two. Yeah. It was a competitive fight, considering that Adesanya just completely styled on everyone else on his way up. I understand the attraction there, but I talked about this before they made the matchup. I was like, this will sell itself, because Vettori will claim he won the first fight and Adesanya will absolutely take the bait, and damned if that didn't happen. Here's the thing. Vettori, obviously, he's a guy, he wakes up angry in the morning. But he doesn't fight like that in the cage. He doesn't fight stupid. Like, he has been such a brilliant tactician in his last couple of fights. We're absolutely going to get the best version of Marvin Vettori on Saturday. Adesanya and Vettori have both improved in the, almost 4 years since their first fight. Vettori has probably improved more. Still not sure it makes a difference, but I'm not allowing myself to be distracted by whatever the hell, like, Hallmark card it was he was wearing, in that like little interview, or what they were yelling at each other. That's silliness. These are two professionals that are going to be their very best selves on Saturday.
The only time I'm gonna disagree with one particular point you made. He fought angry against Karl Roberson. He fought crazy, reckless, power attack, charging into takedowns, a little reckless, and because he was very mad at Roberson. You remember the whole chronicle of the withdrawal and the hotel fight.
I
But
said his last couple.
but the counterexample, of course, is his fight against Hermanson, which, man, oh man, like we can chalk up the Holland fight to all kinds of things, like that Kevin Holland apparently can't take his or defend a takedown from a flyweight. I didn't have anything ready there. Vettori is a very smart fighter in the cage. So is Adesanya, man. Adesanya's a computer. Adesanya's the kind of guy who sees that a couple leg kicks worked on Paulo Costa and says, that's it. I figured it out. I got it. I'm going to do that 12 more times. And hey, Costa, how's taste my foot? And then other gross things. And then how can I get Walid Ismail mad again? And that kind of thing. So when it comes to the rematch, I don't know if anybody will be able to take down Adesanya and keep him down for long at middleweight. Jan Blachowicz obviously did so. Size difference, was pretty stark in the cage there. But I see his 6'4" middleweight frame being sturdy enough to probably stave off most of the attempts. Now, the only way I see Vettori gaining some headway is if the first 2 rounds is all about spamming attempts. Make Izzy defend. Make him defend against the cage. Make him try and go for a whizzer and do anything he can to sprawl and stop it all from going to the ground and wear himself out from all the grappling, and hope that Adesanya gets a little sloppy because he's a little tired. That, I think, it would be Vittori's best chance of victory, and in doing so, close the distance and not let Adesanya pick away at him like he is so excellent at doing. I can't see him doing that for 5 rounds. I just can't see more than maybe a round in 2 minutes or so before Adesanya goes, okay, we're not doing that anymore. And even if it is boring for a minute, it's all part of the plan I see. Like the Romero fight. He stayed away from Romero's best weapon. Terrible fight, but smart fight. I see Adesanya probably will enrage Vettori in the cage. And what I'm looking forward to the most is when they are inevitably clinched up and Vettori is trying to press him against the cage and Adesanya is whispering things in his ear to make him mad and break Vettori out of his element. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the rampaging Vettori where he's upset that Adesanya said something about his people, his mom, his whatever, because Adesanya is a very good instigator. Like, you think of the things he said to Paulo Costa to get him upset. And I think he'll use what tools he has on display to keep enough distance and beat up Vettori. I don't think he's going to get the finish, though. I don't see this fight ending by stoppage for either fighter. I wouldn't see Vettori getting him out of there, and I don't think outside of say a quick sudden head kick, I just don't see Adesanya getting a stoppage either. And maybe my last question to you is, of those 2 fighters, who would get the stoppage, you think?
If there's a stoppage by either guy, it's probably by Adesanya.
Yeah.
Certainly, if you're right and he is able to get old salty Vettori raging out in the cage, he's gonna knock him out. Like if you lose your composure, if you stop cutting angles and you start coming straight at him, if you start loading up on everything because you just want to knock this asshole out, he is gonna kill you. He's gonna kill you, perhaps more so than any fighter in the history of the sport. He's certainly on that top shelf of people you don't just want to run straight at heedlessly. He has made some very, very good strikers look very pedestrian. You're right in that I don't know if Vettori can replicate the Blachowicz thing and just flat out take Adesanya down and keep him down.
Right.
But he doesn't necessarily need to. Gastelum wasn't able to get Adesanya down with any consistency or keep him down, but the fact that the threat was there opened up other things. Gastelum, I would say at middleweight, Gastelum gave him the closest and hardest fight of anybody. Gastelum certainly landed more clean offense on him on the feet than anyone else he's fought in the UFC.
Yeah.
And it's not because Gastelum's an amazing striker. I mean, he is a pretty good striker, but it's because he kind of had him off balance and on his back foot and worried about, oh, this short little tank of a man is going to drop down and be on my hips again and trying to chuck me across the cage. That's like, if Vettori can set up the dynamic that Adesanya has to be worried about the takedown, you know, that changes the whole complexion of the fight. But yeah, sorry, to circle back to your question, if one guy finishes the other here, it's going to be Adesanya knocking out Vettori.
And it won't be Vettori taking him down and sneaking around at a tired Adesanya who thinks he can hack it on the ground and give up his back. You don't see that as a possible outcome?
I don't see tired Adesanya as a possible outcome.
I think that's right on. I like it a lot. That is an excellent way to end the show. Thank you, Ben, for joining me on this this two-man odyssey. And we'll see you next week. And you know, to everybody watching, thank you for tuning in to Unleashed. We have a lot of fights this weekend, and I'm sure you're going to hear about some of them. You can check out Sherdog.com. We'll have a recap show right after 263, correct?
Yes.
Right after 263, there'll be a live Sherdog recap. I will not be part of it because I will be sleeping because it is a late pay-per-view. But somebody else on this panel right here will be covering that and taking the reins on that. Enjoy the fights, and we'll see you next time.